My dear brothers and sisters, a letter I received some time ago introduces the subject of my talk. The writer was contemplating a temple marriage to a man whose eternal companion had died. She would be a second wife. She asked this question: would she be able to have her own house in the next life, or would she have to live with her husband and his first wife?
Travis Wayne Goodsell. I need desperately to shower and shave, and I need desperately to hook up the system there. Lots of things to do as the first of the month has arrived. It's that time of the month. And things are speeding up, guys. You guys don't believe that it's going to happen. As I watched my views for yesterday, and nobody cared. Nobody is concerned about what's going on right now in Washington, and especially Mormons and those who are formerly Mormon, whether you're ex or just don't want to be a part of it like I am. You're not grasping the full danger that we await with the Mormon Church. Both Trump and Nelson have conspired with Putin. That's a fact. The video I did yesterday, or was it this morning? No, it was last night, I'm pretty sure. Where I connected why Trump is doing what he's doing. And it's because he is being bolstered to be the fulfillment of biblical prophecy. The only problem is it's the bad biblical prophecy. It's the dictator, the antichrist, the bad guy of the narrative. And that's why they're not fully coming out to the public with it, because evangelicals are focused on, yay, Jesus is coming soon. I have news for you guys. But Mormons love evangelicals, and I would like to do that video too, of the evangelical influence on the Mormon Church that has altered the doctrine from its origins, which is why I was inspired to do the playlist for corrected Mormonism, because Mormons no longer recognize Joseph's religion. They praise his name, but haven't got a clue as to what he taught. Mormonism has been infiltrated by evangelical thinking, and it is now an evangelical church, whether Mormons understand it or not. I watched my mom as she would watch Billy Graham, and would give an excuse of, he says a lot of good things. No, Mom, he doesn't. But, you know, that and General Hospital, and Days of Our Lives too. But I only preferred General Hospital because they had the freeze machine that was going to freeze Port Charles, and Luke and Laura were going to save the day. And then in 2000s, they brought in Carrie Werr. That was cool. because I knew her from Sliders. So, the horrors of Mormon polygamy. The reason why I gave that little intro is because in the last General Conference, with my viewpoint now that I've made the connections that the church leaders are not God's prophets, they are the false prophets as prophesied about for the latter days. Everything, my whole paradigm has shifted. When I see the titles of the conference talks, as I was helping my neighbor get digital versions so that he can access them easier with his physical disability, it opened my eyes as the apostles were demanding tithing compliance, thus putting the squeeze on Mormons for the protection money. The elders were the ones, the 70 were the ones who were somewhat clueless for the most part, and if anything, they would only say, follow the prophet. But then Elder Pullman came along, messed everything up in '84. But Oaks, in the last conference, October 2019, made 2 jokes regarding polygamy. And with my new paradigm that I've got now, having studied the real church history, and my background, born and raised Mormon, 50 years, the experiences I've had with what I've been able to do in the church, sent shockwaves down my spine as it became clearer what the church is up to. They're planning on getting their kingdom back with the destruction of America under Trump. They made a deal with Putin. You know, that Russian temple, you don't make deals with Putin unless there's an extortion threat involved. And you have to get dirty, and that dirt was the giving of $32 billion through those LLC companies, and that exposed by Max Roth in May of 2018, as the church got that before General Conference, after Senator Hatch's tax bill for Trump, which was actually for the church, so that Russia could funnel the $32 billion into the church's LLC companies that they newly formed with the tax bill that took effect, and the death of Monson made it all the more easier to do, which then leads to other suspicions, because Nelson was doing a lot of changing in the church as Monson was on his deathbed there in December. But what the church has never stopped wanting to continue is polygamy. Joseph Smith, 3 times, 3, count them, Mormons, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, I can't remember the Japanese. Insi ni. But un, deux, trois, there's the French. If you watched the other video where I talked about French. But I think that may have been the one that I said, nobody's going to be interested in this video. And 3 times in the Book of Mormon, no polygamy, no polygamy, no polygamy. Then Joseph Smith in the 1835 Doctrine and Covenants, he had a chapter, no polygamy, monogamy, one man, one woman. And yeah, Brigham Young changed all that with section 132, put in the year before he died. And he said, oh, Joseph Smith wrote this. Surely, read it, ponder it, pray, and you'll get good feelings, as Joseph tells Emma, let me practice polygamy or I kill you. That's uncharacteristic of a guy who eloped with Emma, who lost children, and she stayed by his side the whole time and refused to go with Brigham. So, you know, but hey, Brigham Young said it, must be true. And so, yeah, section 132 is the law unto the church. Polygamy. 10 virgins. You know, at least Brigham Young could have said 100. Come on, Brigham. You gotta outdo the Islam. They get 72. Which is the number of people that worked on the Septuagint. Which Septuagint means in Greek, when translated into English, 70. So, people couldn't do math, I guess. But that's the law of Sarah, as he used Abraham and Sarah as the example. And the church never took it down. They took John Taylor's revelations about polygamy, took those out of the Doctrine and Covenants that were added in. But section 132, they kept in there because it was Joseph who gave it. And they did an official declaration. Why can't the American government just leave us alone? And so, yeah, when Doctrine and Covenants was the lesson and section 132 was the lesson, one particular week while I was up in Canada in McGrath, as the teacher was pro-polygamy, and he was going to teach the lesson to justify its practice. And the members in that little classroom, I think we were on the stage, we're all saying, hell no. And I'm new to Canada. My wife took me up there to learn the ways of the Canadians who were banned by Lethbridge, and so they had to form pocket communities a certain kilometer distance away from Lethbridge. And so you have roads that go back and forth to the cities, to these pocket cities. So it's like an atomic structure that you create there in southern Alberta. And so I'm learning about these Mormons up in Alberta. And wow. But there are certain horrors with polygamy. And if you've seen the HBO show Big Love, you'll learn a lot of the horrors that polygamy causes. But Big Love was a big supporter, or trying to be sympathetic to the characters to justify polygamy. And despite showing the horrors that do arise as women battle to be the first wife, to sabotage each other, to rise to prominence with the husband, and all that mess, and the attention, and the husband's desire to pursue another woman, needing the permission of other wives, even though it's just the first wife he needs permission from. So they weren't entirely accurate in how it functions, but it's a show. And you see Bill Paxman? Is that his name? Or is it another Bill? I get Bill Pullman and Paxman mixed up. One of them was the president in Independence Day, and the other is the polygamist father. So what are the horrors from the Mormon perspective that we have learned from the bad example of Brigham Young? Brigham Young in 1852 gave that infamous talk where he said Adam was Heavenly Father, and that he brought one of his wives with him into the garden, and they left it out of the teachings of the President Brigham Young for Priesthood and Relief Society, which was the first book that they did, rather than Joseph Smith. Yeah, they left it out. They quoted Adam. They left out one of his wives. They say Adam brought Eve into the garden, and they completely left out Adam as Heavenly Father. So there was some major editing going on there with my peers in the curriculum department as we were finishing up the scripture footnotes for the foreign language editions that were released in 2009. So yes, I even know who was involved in the Brigham Young manual, and thus continued through the rest of the prophets. And so I know exactly what they were doing when they got to Benson and messed up the lesson on, was it the Spirit or the Holy Ghost, guys? So, yeah, and I did that video where I shared with you my experience in this ward boundaries at that church where the Elders Quorum president had me give that lesson. And so Brigham Young established polygamy that very year. And then all of a sudden everybody wanted to support Brigham Young and show their loyalty for the prophet of the living God by writing in their journals, I remember Joseph Smith, he wanted to practice polygamy. He told me about this angel that had the sword, and he was going to kill Joseph immediately if he didn't practice polygamy openly. And that was in 1832, you say? And how long did the angel let him live without practicing polygamy? And so his murder was justified because Joseph didn't practice polygamy? And yet, And so, yeah. And then all of a sudden, all these women who were sealed to Joseph Smith by Willard Richards as the recorder after Joseph had died, they were all starting to come up with their own stories. Oh yeah, Joseph came to me and it was so tender and I was honored to be his wife. What are you saying, dear? Oh yeah, our son isn't really yours. What? And of course now in DNA days, they're keeping all that a secret because guess what? Joseph Smith didn't have any of those kids that those women claimed. They were the original fathers, not Joseph. So yeah, they lied. Why would they lie? Lying's a sin. But, hey, lots of people believe them. No man knows my history, right, Fawn Brody? And so, polygamy was all the excitement of the day. And Section 132, as it came out later, says it is a commandment in order to be exalted in the highest degree of the celestial kingdom, Mormons. That's where you get to have sex with a woman and a woman and a woman and a woman for all eternity. And originally it was on your own planet, but it's changed now. All of humankind, of all existence, are all on one planet now. You can be together forever with your family unit. But what about my parents? Oh yeah, family unit. What about their parents? Yeah, family unit. What about my kids' kids? Yeah, family. Now, logic just doesn't take a hold when dumbness is instituted in the doctrine. And so Brigham Young followed the tradition of the Wild West and Deadwood, and had brothels permitted to be built. Orrin Porter Rockwell got to be the first brothel down at the point of the mountain. It's been torn down now, I think. I don't think they made it a historical site. Come tour the brothel of Orrin Porter Rockwell. But eventually Brigham Young had one built on Regent Street in downtown Salt Lake City. And that still exists, as they uncovered the porn on the walls as they peeled off the other layer that covered it up. Like I said, I would have loved it if Brigham Young's garden ceremony in the temple endowment still maintained even to this day. I would have kept the secret. The temple is a holy place. We're not allowed to share what goes on in the temple because it's sacred. But yeah, polygamous wives of Adam were portrayed in the garden scene in the temple of Brigham Young's ceremony. They didn't have the Salt Lake Temple built during Brigham's time. Did they? No, it was 40 years it took to build. St. George was first, so St. George Temple would have had it. They had the endowment house. 47, 87. So yeah, Brigham Young was dead. Interesting. Because it's curious, because he got to at least do the blueprints, and there were tunnels, which people say was revelation, because now we can put air vents. And yet, thinking back, if he's not inspired by God, that means he wasn't inspired for air vents. What were they supposed to be used for, Brigham? And then, yes, he built the brothel there in Salt Lake on Regent Street, which he frequently attended, despite having all the wives that he had, even though he lost a number of them through divorce. Especially the one 2 years before he died, which got him arrested for not paying up. Yeah, you take another look at Section 132 with that understanding in mind. As he says, women who commit adultery are to be murdered. Those unfaithful whores. And so when, let's again try to think logically, Mormons. If you've got a small populace who have escaped because Brigham Young caused the controversy and had their founder murdered, and then you're extorted to be sealed to Joseph Smith or to Brigham or to Heber C. Kimball in order to get support, as women were not as independent as they are today, thanks to the civil rights movement. And so you're dependent on a man to take care of you, and so you're extorted with having to share a bed once every... How many wives did Brigham have? Were there that many women over men? Because guess what, guys? There were Mormons who followed Brigham who didn't get to have a wife because of his polygamy. And thus the brothels became necessary. So only the what's a female bastard? Bastardette? Bastardess? They got to be the prostitutes. And so the guys who didn't get married only had the whores at the whorehouse to have sex with, and of course those women were shared with all the guys, and even those who had wives. And surprised syphilis didn't get a problem as it did with Al Capone. But that's the problem that we're going to be facing, guys, is that when Trump destroys America and Putin sends his people in to mine Bears Ears uranium and other jobs that will be Russian, the church has been promised to become their kingdom and will reinstitute polygamy. And when I was in an older singles ward, the statistics were showing that more women were single than men. But there's going to be a lot of murder, death, kills, Demolition Man, that will occur. Men will be sent to war, as Isaiah says, and 7 women shall take hold of 1 man, because they need to survive. And like I said, the government think Trump is the fulfillment of biblical prophecy and are promoting him, and that's why they're not kicking him out, that they're giving full loyalty and protection to him in the Senate and in the House and in the White House, is because of that. Because otherwise they have Pence. Pence is your typical Republican. Pence wants to do everything that Trump does. You know, hey, he's the perfect candidate for the GOP. Why don't they just get rid of Trump and put Pence in? Because Trump is the fulfillment of biblical prophecy, not Pence. So, beware. If there are men who are able to survive, you won't get a wife. And you'll have to hope, if that's the right word to use, that brothels will be built for you. Because remember, it's abstinence. You can't even have dirty thoughts. And I did that video for you guys. That was the hour-long video. Because this one's going on 30 minutes. It's coming. And Oaks is all excited for it, despite his cute little old lady. Saw them at the temple, Salt Lake. I was coming down from a session, down the stairs, and he was going into a session. And he was all happy, shaking the temple president's hand and the others that were there also to greet everybody going into the session. And his wife was behind him. He's a good Mormon wife. Is always behind her husband. The rising generation of women don't like that. And that's another problem that's going to have to come about, is that you rising generation of women who are more liberal than your grandmas and even your mothers, you're not going to like what's going to happen, as you are going to be forced to submit just like your grandmothers did. And I'm not confident that they're going to allow the first wife to select the women for her husband. I'm pretty sure these horn dogs are going to be saying, I want her, 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 and her. If you don't like it, you're dead. So that's the horror we're going to be facing here. And well, Wednesday, 2 p.m. That's the deadline. On Monday, I will be going to the federal courthouse to do that federal requirement, because the judges refused to respond to the case against the church, which means I won. But now I'll be able to put a stain on the record showing that I won and that it's being defied. And that's what I'll be doing Monday. And so, as I also pointed out in another video that has not been watched, on Friday is the sign in the heaven for Nelson to be brought to his knees. When the sign of Trump came to that same star location, Trump was impeached. So I don't know how it works, it just does. Nelson's reckoning is on Friday, 2 days after Trump's acquittal vote at 2 p.m. Wednesday here in Utah. 2 p.m. here in Utah Wednesday. 4 p.m.? It must be 2 p.m. for Utah time. So, because they got to do stuff in the beginning. So yeah, it could be a result of that, as Putin and Trump betrayed President Nelson. Because something happened that caused the Russians to ban the church. But Putin's still playing along as if he's going to stick to the deal. Because John Huntsman got booted out of office, and all of a sudden he's running for governor. When Putin wants the Bears Ears uranium, and Gary Herbert failed because the Washington Post leaked it. Yeah, and then I've done the videos exposing Governor Huntsman, or Governor Herbert, trying to kill the homeless and the poor. He backed off on the tax for food, which I did the video exposing how taxation is targeted to discourage people from buying those products. So when you tax food, you're discouraging people from buying food. Unfortunately, food is a basic necessity to live. And so you can't just ban food, discourage people from buying food. What you end up doing is torturing people. But Herbert repealed it, but they're coming back. They're coming back. The homeless situation, 1,100 beds that were not enough in downtown at the Rio Grande area. And they devised a plan way back in 2002 for the urban redevelopment. And they had no intentions of building other shelters. That was afterward when people complained. Fine, we'll build 3 shelters. How about that? Oh, that sounds great. Now they're built 700 beds rather than more than 1,100, which was not enough. And so once the shelters are built, which are 400 beds less, the police now get activated and they arrest the homeless and ship them to the shelters where there's no room in the inn for Christmas. And then the police get pissed and the homeless get pissed, and people protest to protect the homeless, and they get arrested as terrorist threats because it's illegal to protest. Government doesn't commit crime. So why are you protesting other than that you're a terrorist? It's just total chaos, and nobody gives a damn. It's coming, guys. It's been slow, incremental stages. And you are just like that frog in boiling water. You don't recognize it if you slowly turn up the temperature. But it's getting damn hot here in Utah. And not just from climate change.